afternoon, everyone. I'm Ebed Lamini. I'm the co-founder and chairman of SKX Productivity. 16 years ago, we formed a chartered accountancy firm, black-owned, 100% black-owned, Segela Qabiso. And as we matured to play in a global space, we then joined the network of Productivity. So it's my pleasure and honor to introduce to you the CEO of Productivity Global, Joe Tarantino.
Thank you, Abel, and good afternoon, and hello, everyone. And I'm honored to visit with you all today, and I hope everybody's doing well. Having been to South Africa a couple of times in my past, I know September is normally a beautiful time. And if it makes you feel any better, I'm here in New York, and it's going to be raining all day long.
Same here.
What a year it has been. This year, 2020, has been a year many of us would just as soon forget. The scope of the COVID-19 pandemic has been beyond belief. And we naturally look forward to better days. But as we do so, we recognize the clouds of uncertainty that remain on the horizon. And the pandemic is just one of the few crises that has contributed to that uncertainty. And our last speaker, Beverly, pointed out a number of crises that we're dealing with. Maybe first to introduce myself, I was a partner at Arthur Andersen, and you may recognize that as a global professional services firm, and Abel was part of that firm as well. I led Andersen's financial services assurance practice for the metropolitan New York area, and served on its North American and global leadership teams for the financial services industry. And I was there for 22 years. I thought I would be there for my entire career. However, we turned the lights out on the firm in May of 2002. And right after leaving Andersen, we formed Protiviti, a global consulting firm, since our inception in 2002, and have been the firm's previous speaker mentioned. I mean, the disruption of Andersen, the financial crisis, and now the current environment that we're in. I normally travel 85% of my time around the world and throughout the United States. And my wife and I have had an empty nest up through just last year, but I've now been working from my home office for the last 6 months and sharing the house with our 2 daughters who have returned. And it's been quite an adjustment to work and family life. And I'm sure many of you are experiencing the same degree of change in your lives. Having experienced the global financial crisis 12 years ago, I thought I had seen it all, but I never contemplated that a pandemic would literally shut down the economy and whole industries. COVID-19 and the developing construct around social justice present as difficult an environment in which to run a business and plan for the future as I've ever seen in my career. And while the severity of the picture today varies by industry, my view is that CEOs are operating under extreme stress in a profoundly strenuous climate that has, number one, created unprecedented new work environments, concerns, and anxiety. Number two, invalidated the ability to use historical information and trends as a basis for supporting judgments and forecasts. Number three, forcing innovations that must be implemented in a fraction of the time that it took prior to the pandemic. And lastly, created a dynamic in which everyone must be comfortable being uncomfortable. And I think as we take stock of the environment that we currently face, the question is, how do we manage uncertainty so that we can face the future with confidence? And while I certainly don't have all of the answers, I've had the opportunity to have many discussions to their safety, well-being, and needs, and also creating positive memories. And in this environment, the first necessity requires an unequivocal focus on people's safety and health, followed by constant listening and frequent, transparent communication. So I think it's also important to communicate frequently, transparently, and empathetically. In periods of uncertainty, I don't believe that leaders can communicate and solicit feedback too often. We should all err on the side of too much rather than too little. And we should keep our people, customers, suppliers, and stakeholders informed, explain the realities that the business faces, and emphasize the positive as much as possible while also keeping it real. I also think it's acceptable and appropriate to point out the things that you don't know and where you're still looking for answers and doing work, maybe through the data that was discussed on the previous presentation. Lastly, going back to my earlier comment, leaders should migrate toward people who put their best foot forward and are team-oriented during the crisis, rather than those who complain, look for obstacles to blame, and are individually focused. I think what you'll find is that new leaders will always emerge expand their reach in the market. This is not a time to cling to business as usual or expect that things will return to the normal of the past. I've been impressed with how some companies have been able to innovate their processes, products, and services in a matter of days, if not hours, to pivot rapidly in response to the market realities imposed by the COVID-19. In effect, accomplishing new innovations that might have taken months or maybe even years to implement prior to the pandemic. In his last earnings call, the Microsoft CEO said that we've seen 2 years worth of digital transformation in 2 months. To me, that says it all. And I believe that the most resilient organizations think and act digitally at their core. They make high velocity, high quality decisions. Most importantly, they relentlessly focus on the customer experience and how to improve it continuously. The ultimate acknowledgement of trust occurs when employees stay with a company for a significant portion of their working career, or satisfied customers put credibility on the line by referring our company's products and services to their colleagues and peers at other organizations. It's a challenge to build, but easy to lose. And it's said that trust is built in drops and lost in buckets. And it's even more of a challenge in a totally remote environment. How we as leaders behave, I think, and the decisions that we make during challenging times also influence the level of trust that the companies we lead. Protiviti has been fortunate now to be named to Fortune magazine's top 100 best places to work for 5 years in a row. And through this process, we've learned about the importance of company leaders listening to their people with empathy, learning from them, strengthening the bonds of trust across the company. But in addition to listening and learning, leaders must act. And that means implementing improved processes, measuring progress, and establishing accountability for results. And most importantly, doing these things in a manner that engages and is transparent to all employees. So the fourth principle is relevant once the crisis is over. I found it healthy and energizing to focus on our business strategy and how the company will remain relevant after the crisis. This forces a discussion with your team on how to seize business opportunities created by the crisis itself and shed historical approaches that may no longer be relevant. Evaluating scenarios with different financial outcomes enables management to think through the levers that can be pulled during an economic downturn. This type of planning helped our business significantly when we did scenario planning after the global financial crisis. The exercise takes some of the emotion out of the equation when dealing with a crisis, and also helps educate leaders who have never been through a crisis to understand what needs to be done in advance so that the organization is aligned and ready to act quickly. As leaders, we should encourage our people to think bigger and increase the velocity of decision making. We should empower those who are customer facing and have innovative talents to make things happen. given the fluid and uncertain situations that we face, this is an opportunity to challenge employees to step forward and take the initiative. In turn, we should embrace their feedback and ideas, provided that they're on strategy. The final principle lays a vitally important foundation. I call it preserve your the recent events. Every organization, regardless of industry, needs to be resilient in response to the market. I have a few comments on this point. In service industries, such as ours, firms will need to determine the need for office space and how to use it, as well as how to develop new customers in a remote service delivery environment. The dynamics of relationship building is changing. In consumer products and retail and banks, we can expect emergence of innovative contactless systems, including enhanced delivery services, online payment requirements, and remote service options. Brick and mortar retail venues may have to double down on experiential retail and multiple channel retailing. With respect to delivery and distribution businesses and channels, we can expect expanding, if not exploding, demand in the market. While the technology industry experiences bumps in the road at the outset with supply chain disruptions as well as reductions in production due to mandated lockdowns, it's largely benefiting from the pandemic and expected to grow significantly over the next 5 years. But the industry will need to improve dramatically on the diversity and inclusion front to achieve its full potential. On the healthcare front, telehealth visits, drive-through testing, remote care, and touch points through patient portals are expected to become the mainstays. And that's just scratching the surface. Machine learning may be used to develop vaccines faster and wearable devices to detect illnesses sooner. As for energy, the pandemic accelerated the timeline for renewables to overtake coal. In the US, it's likely that renewables have now permanently overtaken coal. With the decline in energy demand during the pandemic, the skies and waters cleared in many areas around the world. The experience is expected to heighten the influence of environmental concerns in shaping energy policy over the next several years. In manufacturing, we can expect a stronger emphasis on aligning offerings with customer needs and finding untapped market opportunities to drive new revenue streams and deploy excess capacity. There likely will be further shifts to digital B2B sales interactions and remote selling, and substantial efforts to improve supply chain resilience. Manufacturing will reshore and nearshore. The traditional higher education model is also on the cusp of the most radical re-engineering in its history. In the US, reduced enrollment is expected, especially international students, with more commuting and an emphasis on virtual classrooms, smaller class sizes, and social distancing. We're seeing that happen right now. Revenue generating sports programs are being postponed or delayed, and many resource draining programs may be facing the chopping block. As for industries dependent on crowding and concentrating people, industries such as airlines, cruise lines, transit companies, restaurants, hospitality, gaming, professional sports, and motion pictures, they are a long way from completing the transition to the eventual new norm when physical mobility will not be restricted. But I'd like to just share one more point as I close, and that's around the future. And I would say to face the future with confidence, we must offer a compelling vision and purpose that wins the hearts of the minds and hearts of our people. We need to think longer term. And as we focus on the long-term interests of our shareholders, and as leaders, we need to bring the appropriate mix of optimism and realism to our communications and interactions with others, and position our people to succeed as our organizations pursue a vision and purpose that both motivates and inspires. So it's up to all of us. I wish you all good luck and best wishes for your continued health and safety and for the success of your respective organizations. And I'm happy to take any questions if time permits. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Mr. Joe Tarantino. Thank you. Could kindly have a rotating mic. Do we have any questions on the floor? Yes, sir.
Thank you very much. It's Tamsanga Makubela from the South African Council for Graduates and the World Council for Graduates. Very good presentation. Thank you very much. The question I have is, what level
And I wish I had the magic solution around the level of precision in building confidence. You know, I think, you know, having been through a number of situations like this in my career, you try to balance your preparedness and your ability to examine data and information and try to make the most informed decisions that you can at a period of time and communicate that to your peers and to the organization so that they understand what's driving your business decisions. I don't think you can ever be 100% confident about, you know, where you're going in the future. But I think there are lots of steps that you can take to build a higher level of confidence than just, you know, having a flippant approach or an ad hoc approach to driving change. And so, you know, we're in an environment right now where there remains a high level of uncertainty around a number of things, and I talked about many of them in my comments. And you know, when we're talking and when I'm talking to our firm, I just try to be as transparent with them around what I'm dealing with and what they should be aware of, and give them the insight around the decisions that we're making, which are for their benefit and for our clients' benefit. Not every one of them are going to be the right decision. And, you know, we've made a number of mistakes over the years. You try to learn from them. and it hopefully helps you build a level of experience that narrows down that precision around how much risk to take on. So, there's no magic solution, but I think information, data, and a lot of discussion with your peers and with colleagues outside the firm, I think helps raise the level of confidence, and not only with yourself but with the people that you manage.
No, absolutely, Joe. Thank you so much. So, have you been well answered? Thank you. I think the takeaway there, as he's mentioned, is the reliance on data also has an amount of error as well. So the communication and providing human-based insights as well as we lead effectively in a time of change. Is there any other question for Mr. Joe, just as we wrap up? Yes, Dr. Malapo?
Joe, thank you so very much for your available time. We highly appreciate it. And then to your Jim and the other people. Presentation was awesome. I want to deal with number 4 on your 5 principles on focusing on relevance. The problem with leadership now, particularly in the world, we now have people or CEOs who are now becoming lifetime CEOs or lifetime.
We're not relevant, clients don't hire us, right? We have to have relevant skills, methodologies, capabilities in order to solve the problems that our clients' businesses face. And what we have told our people, our young people and our leaders in the firm, is that they have to be prepared to re-engineer themselves continuously in this. Back on my career as a 40-year career, and I've re-engineered myself several times over the course of my career. But with the pace that change is taking place right now, technological change, disruptive change, we think that that's accelerating. And even for the college graduates that join us, we tell them that, while your academic education is certainly relevant to building skills and getting you into the profession, you can expect that over time, you're going to be working in a variety of different areas that might be totally different than what you were trained to do. So I think it's important for us as leaders to challenge ourselves and challenge our leaders to continue to stay focused on the market and the market's needs, and in our business, our clients or customers' needs. And we have to make sure that the skills and capabilities that we're bringing to the table, or if you're a product-based firm, the products that you're bringing to the table are aligned with what the market is looking for, and maybe thinking a step ahead on what you think the market will be looking for some years out. So there is, a lot to deal with in terms of facing that future, because innovation is part of that. And we've established a number of innovation labs in the firm to promote that within our culture and to accelerate that thinking within the firm, so that we can work side by side with our clients and work with them to innovate their business, but at the same time, we're innovating our own relevance for the future.
Absolutely, innovating your own relevance. Thank you so much, Mr. Joe.